Hi everyone, my name is Mark, and today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. Keith and Sherri Papini first met in middle school when he was in the 7th grade and she was in the 8th. They were each other's first kiss. Their friendship quickly blossomed, and they remained close throughout their teenage years. However, as time went on, they lost touch with each other and went their separate ways. Years passed, and Sherri moved on with her life. She married another man in 2006, but their marriage only lasted for 2 years. After the divorce, Sherri found herself single again. Little did she know, fate had other plans in store for her. One day, she unexpectedly ran into Keith, and sparks instantly flew. The years apart had brought them both growth and maturity, and they realized just how much they had missed each other. Keith and Sherri arranged a date to give their love another chance. From that moment on, their connection grew stronger with each passing day. Within a year of reconnection, Keith and Sherri knew they were meant to be together. They married in 2009, had 2 children, and lived in Redding, California. Sherri used to work in telecommunications, but after giving birth to her children, she quit her job and stayed home with her children. Keith continued to work at Best Buy as a member of the Geek Squad. From the outside, the Papini family seemed to have an ideal life. On November 2, 2016, Keith and Sherri Papini's image of the perfect life shattered when Keith arrived home to find his wife missing. It was unusual because Sherri was usually always home when Keith came home from work. Initially, Keith assumed Sherri had gone on a walk, but he became increasingly worried as time passed, and she never returned. Keith called the daycare center that his children attended to see if Sherri had picked up their children yet. To his surprise, the school secretary informed him that Sherri had not. Keith's concern for Sherri intensified, and he decided to check the Find My iPhone app on his phone. The app revealed that Sherri's phone was located at the end of the driveway. Without hesitation, Keith ran outside and searched the area. To his dismay, he found Sherri's phone lying on the ground with her headphones nearby. Even more unsettling, there were strands of hair entangled in the headphones. After Keith made the disturbing discovery of Sherri's phone and headphones at the end of the driveway, he contacted the authorities with the Shasta County Sheriff's Office. The Sheriff's Office immediately took Sherri's disappearance seriously and involved the FBI from the start of the ensuing investigation. Keith was determined to bring attention to Sherri's disappearance and pleaded for her safe return. Recognizing the importance of getting Sherri's name and face out to the public, Keith spoke to the media, hoping to generate support and assistance in finding her. The media played a significant role in amplifying the story of Sherri's disappearance. Sherri's beauty, blonde hair, and blue-eyed appearance made her case captivating to the public, and news channels eagerly covered every detail. Her perfect life as a devoted wife and mother only added to the intrigue surrounding her sudden disappearance. Once Sherri's disappearance became public news, the Shasta County Sheriff's Office began receiving a large number of tips. However, despite the sheer volume of information called into the police, none of the tips proved productive in the ongoing search for Sherri. As the investigation into Sherri's disappearance continued, investigators focused on examining Sherri's phone for any potential clues. Upon reviewing the contents, they discovered a heated text message exchange between Sherri and her husband, Keith, from a few months prior. This exchange raised suspicions among police, leading them to wonder if Keith could have been involved in Sherri's disappearance. Despite the potential suspicion, Keith proved to be cooperative with the police. He volunteered to take a polygraph test, hoping to help clear his name from any suspicion. Keith passed the polygraph. In addition to the text message exchange between Keith and Sherri, investigators uncovered several texts from men disguised under female names in Sherri's phone. Upon closer examination, it seemed as though Sherri was planning to leave Keith. On November 10, 2016, the police tracked down one of the men from Sherri's phone and interviewed him regarding her whereabouts. According to the man, he and Sherri had met 5 years earlier at a restaurant while she was attending a work conference. The man stated he had no idea where Sherri was, but he had some insights into her relationship with her husband, Keith. During the interview, the man revealed that Sherri had a disregard for Keith and feared him. He had allegedly told Sherri that Keith was violent and abusive and would often keep her locked up in their home. After receiving the accusation from the man who knew Sherri that her husband Keith was abusive, the police launched an investigation to determine if there was truth to these accusations. However, after interviewing friends and neighbors of the couple, the police were unable to find any substantial evidence to support the notion that Keith was a violent individual. What the police learned from Keith and Sherri's friends was interesting. All the individuals expressed that Sherri was known for having a tendency to be dramatic and attention-seeking. This info led the police to consider the possibility that the allegations of abuse may have been exaggerated or fabricated. Several days after Sherri went missing on November 24, 2016, the police received a phone call at 4:32 a.m. on Thanksgiving morning. The caller informed the police that there was a woman on the side of I-5 who appeared to be in need of assistance. After receiving this information, the officers swiftly responded and headed to the location. Upon arriving at the scene, the police discovered a woman with chains and zip ties wrapped tightly around her. Due to her disheveled state, it took a few moments for the officers to realize that the woman was Sherri Papini, who had been missing for several days. The officers were relieved to find Sherri alive and quickly began the process of freeing her from restraints. They carefully removed her chains and zip ties, ensuring her safety. Once she was released, the officers transported Sherri to the hospital to receive medical attention. When Sherri arrived at the hospital, the severity of the situation became apparent. Sherri had multiple bruises covering her body, her hair was noticeably shorter, and a burn mark could be seen on her arm. She also had a bad rash on her arm. Additionally, her weight had declined to a dangerous level, at only 87 pounds. While Sherri was recuperating at Woodland Memorial Hospital, the police attempted to interview her, but Sherri was too emotional to provide any details. Sherri would only cooperate if her husband, Keith, were present during the interview. As a result, Keith was allowed to stay in the room while Sherri recounted the incident. According to Sherri, she was out jogging when a dark-colored SUV driven by two women approached her. One of the women, who was older, disembarked from the vehicle and approached Sherri, brandishing a gun. The younger woman remained in the car. Sherri stated that she was forced into the back of the vehicle against her will. Prior to entering the SUV, Sherri retrieved her phone and headphones from the driveway and intentionally left them behind, along with strands of her hair. She said she did this to alert Keith that something was wrong. Sherri continued telling the story of her abduction to the police and her husband, Keith. She said that during the journey, she kept falling asleep in the back of the SUV, making it hard to keep track of time. Additionally, she mentioned that the two women had wrapped something around her face, preventing her from seeing where she was. According to Sherri, the two women informed her that they had kidnapped her because there was a man who wanted to buy her, and she was to be delivered to that person. They did not specify who the man was or where he was located. Sherri expressed fear and concern about her situation, as she had no idea where she was being taken or what would happen to her. During her captivity, Sherri claimed she was subjected to physical abuse by one of the two women she was being held with. According to Sherri, this woman would hit her frequently, leaving her with various injuries. Sherri also alleged that she was branded on her right shoulder with the word Exodus, which the woman said had been done to appeal to Sherri's buyer, who was allegedly a police officer. Sherri further stated that her captors played mariachi music frequently, which she found unsettling and disorienting. The constant playing of this type of music added to the atmosphere of her captivity, making it more isolating and oppressive. Sherri mentioned that she was confined to a single room with a boarded window. Regarding the living conditions, Sherri talked about a closet where she was chained. This closet served as a makeshift bathroom, as there was a bucket inside that she could use to urinate and defecate. About 3 weeks into her captivity, Sherri recalled hearing a gunshot. Following the gunshot, Sherri never saw the older Hispanic woman again. This sudden disappearance raised several questions in Sherri's mind. Was she killed? The younger woman, who had remained silent throughout the ordeal, now took charge. This woman ordered Sherri to get into a car, and they proceeded to drive along I-5. Suddenly, the car came to a stop. Sherri was startled by the sudden and unexpected halt. She looked around, trying to assess the situation. Then, the younger woman told Sherri to exit the vehicle. Confused and uncertain, Sherri cautiously complied. Sherri felt a mixture of fear and excitement as she exited the car. Was this her chance to escape? Or was she being led into a more dangerous situation? She was left with no answers, only uncertainty. After Sherri was found on the side of I-5, the Shasta County Sheriff's Office held a press conference to announce her safe return. During the press conference, the police said Sherri had been abducted by two Hispanic women, sparking widespread concern among the public. However, the response to this news was not without consequences. Following the press conference, a wave of racism emerged, targeting individuals of Spanish descent. The reporting of Sherri's abduction had intensified public fear and anxiety, leading some to lash out at individuals perceived to be associated with the Hispanic community. When Sherri became settled back at home after her abduction, she started attending therapy sessions. Since Sherri lived in California, she became eligible for the Victims' Compensation Fund, which uses public funds to help pay for victims' therapy. In the aftermath of the abduction, Sherri started spending a significant amount of time in her house. She avoided going out as frequently compared to her previous lifestyle. 1 year into the investigation of Sherri's abduction, the police released a composite sketch of the two Hispanic women believed to be involved in the crime. However, despite this significant step, no leads came in. Additionally, the police revealed the discovery of male DNA on Sherri's underwear, which she was wearing when she was found on the side of I-5. The police said this DNA sample did not match that of Sherri's husband, Keith. 2 years had passed since Sherri's abduction, and the police still hadn't obtained a match on the male DNA found in her underwear. Despite their efforts, no leads emerged, and the case remained unsolved. However, in 2020, a breakthrough finally came. With renewed determination, the police working on Sherri's case sought authorization to utilize familial DNA techniques to locate the donor of the elusive DNA. This innovative approach allowed them to use the existing DNA profile to identify potential relatives of the donor. Familial DNA testing is a powerful investigative tool used in criminal investigations. It involves analyzing DNA evidence to determine if it matches any family members of a suspect. By identifying genetic markers shared between family members, investigators can narrow the list of potential suspects and identify potential familial relationships. When the police working on the Sherri Papini case got the family DNA match on the male DNA found in her underwear, they were surprised to see that it came back as a close relative to James Reyes, Sherri's ex-boyfriend. This development raised several questions and became a major turning point in the investigation. The police wondered if Sherri's ex-boyfriend could have been responsible for her abduction. In June 2020, investigators retrieved a soda bottle from James's trash and took it into the forensic lab for DNA testing. The forensic lab conducted DNA testing on the soda bottle. 1 month later, a lab tech called the police and informed them that James Reyes was a match to the DNA sample discovered in Sherri's underwear on the day she was found. After the police got the DNA match back, they conducted an interview at the Costa Mesa, California, home of James Reyes, a sports shop worker, regarding the case of Sherri, his former girlfriend. James provided a statement to the police, explaining that he had dated Sherri approximately 10 years earlier. He said the last time he saw Sherri was a year after they broke up, but he had heard rumors of her disappearance and subsequent safe return. During the interview, the police asked James if he was responsible for Sherri's kidnapping, and James denied having any involvement in her abduction. However, eventually during the interview with the police, James Reyes admitted to being good friends with Sherri despite their breakup 10 years ago. James said he did play a part in Sherri's disappearance, but he did not kidnap her, but rather was simply helping out a friend in need. According to James, Sherri had reached out to him, stating that she was attempting to escape from her abusive husband, Keith. James disclosed to the police on November 2, 2016, that one of his friends had rented a car for him, which turned out to be the same vehicle he used to pick up Sherri the following day. According to James, Sherri got in the back seat and laid down as he made the long drive back to Costa Mesa. Sherri confined herself to the bedroom throughout her stay at James's house. He continued with his daily routine, while Sherri occasionally assisted him by cleaning and cooking. She boarded up the bedroom window because she wanted the room door. While Sherri stayed with James, he noticed that she was intentionally trying to lose weight by eating as little as possible. James informed the police that Sherri requested his help in committing acts of self-harm against herself, specifically by hitting herself hard to create bruises. On one occasion, Sherri asked James to shoot a hockey puck off her knee, even though he was uncomfortable with the request. Despite his reservations, James complied, ultimately engaging in this harmful behavior with Sherri. James admitted to branding Sherri with Exodus on her right shoulder. He stated that they had purchased a wood-burning tool from Hobby Lobby specifically for the purpose of committing the act. According to James, one day, Sherri unexpectedly informed him of her decision to leave his house. Before departing, Sherri requested James to obtain chains and zip ties. Sherri instructed him to bind her securely before driving her back to Redding, California. During the drive, Sherri told James to pull over, which he did. She jumped out of the vehicle, and James drove away. When the police asked James if he knew anything about the two Hispanic women Sherri claimed abducted her, he said he had no idea what she was talking about. When the police visited James's house, they were taken aback by the discovery of numerous rooms that matched descriptions given by Sherri when she talked about where she was held captive. Strikingly, James's bedroom and closet matched a drawing Sherri had made for the police, depicting the exact layout of the rooms she had experienced during her confinement. Furthermore, the police noticed a remarkable coincidence. A table at James's house closely resembled the one Sherri had mentioned in her early interviews with the police. Several days after the police had spoken to James Reyes, they scheduled an interview at the police station with Sherri and Keith. The police had gathered a significant amount of evidence, which they believed to be conclusive proof that Sherri had staged her abduction. During the interview, they were prepared to confront Sherri with their findings. Before the police confronted Sherri with the truth that she staged her abduction, they asked her if she wanted her husband Keith to leave the interview room. However, Sherri did not say anything. The police then made the decision to leave Sherri and Keith alone in the room for a few minutes. During this time, Sherri approached Keith and revealed to him that she didn't want the police to find the Hispanic woman who had abducted her. Sherri believed she owed her life to the woman because she had allowed her to go. She didn't want to press charges against her. Keith listened to Sherri's explanation. He then expressed his concerns because he didn't think Sherri was making any sense and was starting to get scared. He emphasized that regardless of Sherri's decision not to press charges, the woman would ultimately face consequences for her actions. The police returned to the interview room, and that was when Sherri and Keith were informed that the police had obtained a familial DNA match on the male DNA that had been found on Sherri's clothing. The name the police mentioned was James Reyes, her ex-boyfriend. Keith had a physical reaction upon hearing the name. He recognized James as Sherri's ex. After the shocking revelation that James Reyes, Sherri's ex-boyfriend, was a match to the male DNA found on her underwear, the police proceeded to inform Sherri and Keith that James had passed a polygraph test. The police said they thought Sherri staged her abduction. They also stated that they had gathered evidence to corroborate James's story, leading them to believe he was telling the truth. The police informed Sherri that they possessed information indicating that her dramatic weight loss during her disappearance was a deliberate choice on her part to consume fewer calories. They added that the rash on her arm was believed to have originated from the cleaning supplies she had utilized at James's residence. Furthermore, the police asserted that they had acquired knowledge that James had inflicted a brand upon Sherri using a wooden tool they had purchased from Hobby Lobby. Additionally, it was revealed that Sherri's broken nose was the result of an injury she had inflicted upon her using a hockey stick. Despite facing overwhelming evidence indicating she had staged her abduction, Sherri maintained her composure and acted as though she was oblivious to what the police were referring to. Sherri told the police that she hadn't seen James since they broke up years ago when she went to his brother's funeral in Southern California. However, the police informed Sherri that they knew that she was lying. James had provided them with information regarding her disappearance and details that no one else would know. On March 3, 2022, Sherri Papini was arrested by the FBI on charges of lying to federal agents and faking her abduction. 6 weeks after her arrest, she agreed to sign a plea deal with federal prosecutors, admitting that she had orchestrated her kidnapping. Sherri's attorneys had argued that she should receive a sentence of 1 month in prison, followed by 7 months of home custody. However, the state recommended an 18-month sentence. Several months later, in September 2022, Sherri was sentenced to 18 months in prison and ordered to pay a fine of $300,000. However, the judge stated there was little chance she could ever pay back the fine unless she won the lotto. During the sentencing hearing, the judge referred to Sherri as a manipulator and a habitual liar. The judge expressed that he had no doubt that she would have continued to lie if she hadn't been caught. The judge informed Sherri that she needed to be punished in order to deter others from committing copycat crimes. He explained that Sherri had taken advantage of several resources, including victims' funds, Social Security disability payments, and a GoFundMe account established following her alleged kidnapping. Sherri had obtained hundreds of thousands of dollars through these aids. By imposing a punishment on Sherri, the judge aimed to deter other individuals from committing similar crimes. Sherri addressed the court during her sentencing hearing, expressing her remorse and apologizing to the numerous people who had suffered due to her actions. She openly acknowledged her guilt, stating that she was responsible for lying and bringing dishonor upon herself and those around her. In August of 2023, Sherri was granted her release and was placed in a halfway house. Keith and Sherri separated on the day she was arrested in March 2022. A few days after Sherri pled guilty the following month, Keith filed for divorce. He also sued for full custody of their children.